We've got a submission here from RJBishop, and we are blessed to be looking at an Immersion RC Vortex. Hot stuff. This is a very nice quadcopter. I have never flown one, but I've never heard anything bad said about them either. Let's have a look at what we got. One of the things we want to look at is bounce back, as always. And Bishop says, or RJ, however it is, says roll axis is generally a bit better behaved on the hard stops. That is usually the case with mini quads with H-style frames. The reason is that the weight is more spread out on the pitch axis and is more centralized on the roll axis. Therefore, it has less momentum, if you will, on the roll axis and is more inherently sort of damped on the pitch axis. And what that means, though, is it's harder to get the pitch axis moving. So you usually have less vibration on the pitch axis, but it's also harder to get it to stop. So you usually have a harder time tuning out bounce back on pitch. Especially on 3S, I have a fantasy that the 4S helps that a lot because I see a lot of pro level pilots, and this is from back in the days of Clean Flight 181 and 190 before Boris got in the game with the soft filters, before F3 boards started getting popular. Guys flying Nazes on Clean Flight 181, and they were doing flips, and they didn't have bounce back. And so I have this fantasy that the magic bullet is 4S, because I still fly 3S. I'm going to go to 4S soon when I can get the money together for the batteries mostly. I kind of feel like my piloting is there, but not my pocketbook. But enough about me. I fantasized that 4S is the solution, and I notice you're on 3S, and so maybe 4S is the answer. I guess what I'm getting at is you may never be able to get rid of that bounce back on your flips entirely. I haven't been able to. Okay, so enough said about that. Your your values, by the way, I, I you're on LuxFloat PID controller 2. Your values look in the ballpark. None of them jump out at me as strange. Pitch P is higher than roll P. Again, that's because of the weight distribution. Nothing unusual about that. Pitch I is a little higher. Same deal. And pitch D and roll D. So basically, all the pitch values are a little higher. Um, I noticed that you got yaw P limit here. Yaw P limit, I'm 99% sure that it doesn't do anything on PIDC 1 and 2. That yaw P limit is only used for 0, 3, 4, 5. I'm not even sure if it's used on 5. I don't know a lot about harakiri. And that yaw jump prevention is what's used for PIDC 1 and 2. So I don't think this is doing anything, nevertheless. 60, 40, and 8. I like those values a lot. I used to say that starting values for these would be something like 150 and 15 or 16. And I'm thinking that probably a little lower is better. I've also been looking at spectrograms, and obviously I can only look at like my spectrograms and see where the noise is. But the noise is usually it's above 100 hertz easily. And then depending on what your gyro is running at and what your loop time is running at, there's some noise that gets aliased down into the range of, say, 50 to 100. And then most of the actual important stuff is below about 20 hertz. So I'm of the opinion that probably lower filtering is better. How low? I don't know. But I like 60, 40, and 8 these days. 60, 40, 10, something like that. Maybe 50, 35 or 50, 40, 10. It could vary, but I like these numbers. Okay, let's take a look at your log. Bounce back on flips and rolls. First thing I got, as always, gyro traces. I know you didn't ask for this, but I like to look. Beautiful, thing of beauty. Look at that. Look at that. 3S with 6x4, 5 props. Thing of beauty. Also, beautiful sky too. Oh, lovely, lovely. So look how thin these lines are. That's what I'm getting at. Thin lines. That's a noise-free quad. That is after filtering, but you know, what's your gyro LPF? I don't think you said what your gyro LPF was, did you? You did, 188. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so this is not like a super, super lockdown filtered. You know, it's a normal, reasonable amount of filtering for what we're doing these days. And it's very noise free. It's very nice. If it flies good, you could even, you know, in the interest of trying everything, you could even try taking your gyro cut up to 100 and your P-term cut up to say 50, and yeah, maybe D-term cut up to 12. And just because it's so clean, and see if that makes your flips have a little less bounce back. It'll reduce the latency a small amount. Who knows? But it looks really good as it is. So if that doesn't immediately fix it, put it right back the way it was. Let's take a look now at your pitch. And actually, let me do it the way I like to do it, with RC command and the gyro, and then the PID. And let's have a look for, here we go. And we got a flip right here. And let's just watch it first of all, yeah, and see how it looks. A little bit of bounce. I noticed that, first of all, I noticed that it's a single bounce and that it's a relatively soft bounce. Okay, as opposed to a 2 or 3 hard oscillations. So it's more of like a rebound than a bounce. Let's have a look at what your PID is doing during this. P-term pushes into the turn, into the roll or flip. There we go, flip, that's what it is. Then it tries to slow it down. Pretty much the whole time it's trying to slow it down. Okay. And here, P-term is a little confused here. It tries to speed it up just a smidge. So caught up. And now it's trying to slow it down again as you return the stick to center. And here is your bounce. So to me, the softness of that bounce and the fact that there's only a single bounce makes me wonder if your p-value needs to be higher. Let's have a look at some of the rest of your trace and see if there's anything else in there to contraindicate that. All right, here I've found another flip. Let's just take a look at it. That's an interesting one. Okay, so it's a little bit confounded by the fact that you then immediately nose down. I think you stopped a little early, maybe. This one looks really nice, frankly. Here we've got push into the flip, because again, and I say this for people who might not have watched all the videos leading up to this, the P-term goes above the axis, it goes positive. That is the same direction as the RC command and the gyro go. So the P-term is pushing us into the flip. Now we're going fast enough, so the P-term tries to slow us down so we don't. Now we're going a little too fast, so the P-term tries to slow us down. And now here the move is ending. The P-term is on the opposite side of the axis from RC command and the gyro. It's trying to slow us down. And again, this sort of relatively soft overshoot here. I also noticed that the I term, it's hard to judge whether I gain is wrong from the traces, but I noticed that the I term is negative and is staying negative for a good long time. Notice RC command is 0 for a good long time, but I term is negative, and if we look at the PID sum, where's PID sum? There it is, PID sum pitch. Notice that the PID sum, well, here it's almost over. Your bounce back takes forever to end. This is how long. From the moment it goes below the axis here, it is bouncing back. It's mostly over by this point, but there's still a little adrift even here. And that is most likely, if we look at the PID sum, see the PID sum is negative here, the purple line, but the P term is positive. So it's the I term here that is pulling your PID sum negative. So here's what I'm going to say. I think that you should try raising your P term. I would like to see a harder, if there was a bounce, I'd like to see kind of a harder bounce. And then maybe we could tune that with the D term. But because the bounce is really soft, it makes me think that your P term is a little too low. And that's resulting in your I term getting a little bit bigger than it should. And especially when we look at something like this, like P term slows us down. Now we're bouncing back, and P term is trying to fight it. And D term especially. D term isn't helping us here either. Notice that P term is pushing the right direction. We've gone below the axis and we're bouncing back. We don't want that. And P term is pushing against it and fighting it. So P term is doing the right thing by trying to stop this bounce back. But D term and I term are not helping. Is D term too big? Not generally. It doesn't look like D term is too big. All right, I'm gonna give you my final answer. I think you should try a little less filtering. I wonder whether the filtering, I mean, your filtering is not excessive, but I wonder if you had a little less latency, whether the PID loop would do a better job. And since your gyros are so clean, you can try it and you probably won't introduce any bad effect. Leave gyro LPF at 188 for reasons having to do with aliasing and so forth, but increase your gyro cut to maybe 80 or 100 and your P term cut to maybe 50 and your D term to maybe 12 or even 15. And then after you try that, I think you should try to raise your P term on pitch and see what effect that produces. And I think what it'll do is it'll make that bounce sharper and shorter, and that's moving you in the right direction. As long as you stay one bounce, sharper and shorter is in the right direction. If you go from one slow bounce to 3 hard, fast oscillations, you've gone too far. But I think as you increase P, you're going to see that bounce get shorter and sharper, and eventually it's going to be as short and sharp as it can be, at which point you could start trying to tune D to try and sort of get it even smaller. And then another thing you could try is to change your I values. But I have a feeling that if you fix your P, your I value is going to come into line because there will be less error for the I term to accrue. When P is high enough, I does not get as big because P does a better job and I has less error to pick up. Alrighty, good luck. Hope that's helpful. Happy flying.